What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Have you ever wondered, can you communicate directly with spirit guides, teachers, or non-physical consciousness, or even our higher selves? What would they tell us? My name is Kevin Moore, and since 2015, I started to practice a form of communication which is termed channeling. I have been interviewing experts on my talk show to find out, does life continue after we die? And can we communicate with those that have crossed over? With each expert I spoke to, they all had different ideas. Is there knowledge from the past which could be shared with the present moment? So I thought, why not just speak to the non-physical world directly through channelers around the world? And that's what I set out to do. They Call Us Channelers will take the viewers on a journey into the phenomena known as channeling. And my main goal with this docuseries is to bring a new understanding and awareness to channeling by looking within ourselves and asking, is it truly possible that we can all use this innate ability?
My name is Daniel Kaiya Fuson. I live in Ithaca, New York. It's right in the center of New York State. I grew up here and left for college and then went to New York City. And in New York City, I fairly quickly realized I wasn't fitting in. I had a great job, amazing job on just off Wall Street, Silicon Alley. I was making a fair amount of money, a good track, and I couldn't feel my heart. It felt like death going into work every day. And I couldn't fathom what was wrong. And I was starting to get intuitions that made no sense in the world I was in. I was trying to be happy based on the modern standards, and it didn't work. So I ended up kind of crashing. And the only people who could support me were holistic. And that was really confusing at the time. I was very mainstream. I loved sports and rock and roll, mainstream stuff. But very quickly it seemed, wow, what works was yoga, and then chakras, which are yogic energy centers that help students meditate. The path after that was amazing. Like I spent the next 5 years learning from everyone I could learn from. I went to yoga retreats and worked with shamans and musicians and performed. And after 5 years, I was really deep, and I let go of everything. I sold all my stuff, got in my car, and started to travel. And I was on the road for 10 years. I worked in amazing places. I ended up like living at holistic centers and doing healing sessions, teaching people yoga, and then moving on to a farm when I needed to be outside more, and generally trying to ground because I was hearing so much in my head. For much of that time, I talked to everything. I would go into meditations and talk to aliens visiting the earth. I would talk to the spirits of bushes and trees and people's higher selves. I had a real trouble getting caught up with ghosts for quite a while. And eventually I really felt at my wit's end. It was hard to preserve my sanity in a way. And it's not quite this simple, but I had a dream. I got a dream from the Egyptian god of communication, Thoth. People also know him as Hermes and Mercury. And the dream was incredible. It helped me decode 12 chakras in the same way music works. Do you play music at all? Well, it's helpful for anyone who does, but many people have a friend who does. And it can sound complex, but so I won't go too deep into it. But there are mathematical reasons we have 12 notes. There's an elegance to the way 12 notes fit together, and every major instrument we use has 12 notes. But in chakras, typically people use 7. And when you use 7, you can't express a full range of music. It's kind of like a child's flute. There's notes that all sound good together, but you can't access other frequencies. And it works the same way in energy centers. Energy centers are very musical. They're vibration, just like sound. So light and sound can work in a very similar way. And Thoth told me I needed to be working with these 12 chakras because things were happening on frequencies that the normal ones didn't address. And he taught me this pattern. It's very common in music. So it sounds a little out there when I apply it to energy work, but in music, it's called the circle of fifths. And when you meditate in this pattern on the chakras, everything's harmonious. And you can clear yourself to a point where since that dream, I talked to him whenever I needed to, and just started asking questions about the nature of this world and this reality in a way that I was enthralled. Like, it was incredible. I was sitting there and I'm like, any question I'd ever had, I could get answered. Boom, boom, boom. And it started to make more and more sense over the course of years. And eventually he sat me down and said, look, I got work for you. And so he taught me how to integrate this system and use it to help people heal. And I began serving and healing sessions on people. And it was really remarkable how much I could learn about them immediately. And eventually he taught me how to teach it. And I practiced in small groups teaching the courses about 10 years ago, and developed that course in person, and then eventually wrote it up in the book. And so the book is my best attempt to give it to people. It's a little melodramatic, but when I finished it, I'm like, oh, I could die. I've gotten my work down. And it's honestly really incredible. And I tried to make it as simple as possible. There's not much backstory in it. My story is really interesting in a lot of ways, but I never want to distract people with it. It's not really about me. And serving this, like bringing it to people, it's my best attempt to put healing into your hands so you can figure out a lot about what's wrong with yourself by following these patterns. And typically people will be suffering in a way that's quite obvious, but the source of their suffering is more a symptom than the real problem. And it can be hard to zero in on what the real problem is. And these patterns, this code, helps you follow a trail into your spirit to figure out what's going wrong. And the amazing side effect, which is why it fits in so well with channeling, is once you clear yourself in this way, you just ask. I mean, I could talk to any angel who's willing to talk to me. I just ask and I start talking. And for a long time, it was way too much. I was like so curious that every time I encountered someone new, I would start to talk to them. I would just, but it changes you a lot to communicate with an angelic or divine being in this way. So I had to learn to discipline myself. And I did that by coming back to this work that I was taught and to talking to Thoth whenever I got overwhelmed as a discipline. So that's an overview of where I came from and where I'm at. And, there's a lot more in there.
Well, thank you for that. So if I was to ask you just to sum up then what it is you do for people, if someone's curious right now, they've listened back to what you've said there, but they're like, well, hang on a minute, what is the process? What is the procedure? What is that he just explained there?
In all my years of working with Thoth, he gave me this as the best gift that I can bring to the world. And so it's about taking an individual and what are your challenges? What are your wounds? And it's often overwhelming. I have this, and is wrong. And it's hard to find coherence. So by approaching it in this way, I can identify what is most possible to heal now. And it ends up being layered. Like as we address that, it uncovers an opportunity to go a little deeper and often get at the most core problems for people. Often folks are trying to heal things that really are wrong, but those aspects of their life aren't ready to be addressed, aren't ready to heal. And this system can quickly help you diagnose what is ready to move, to change, to heal. And what does that reveal? What are the opportunities? Where does this lead you? Like, who can you be without the burdens and wounds that you carry in life? And all of this is an extremely quick way to diagnose those things. And then there's a lot of work to do after that, but at least you get to have confidence that your effort is put in the right place.
So your website is?
Wildflower Fire. Three words in one, wildflowerfire.com.
So on your website, you offer there's a number of options on your website, but one of them is spiritual coaching. So everything we've just spoken about there, when it comes to the healing sessions that you do, and I'm calling them that, and I might be calling it completely wrong, right?
It's fine, yeah.
Right? And do correct me if it's wrong. But I mean, okay, so how does a spiritual coaching session work, and what issues can I come to you with?
Well, in many ways, you can come to me with anything because people are often burdened in healing by something else. So if someone says, I'm challenged in my relationships, I can help take some of the baggage off your back. And then you'll be lighter and more able to focus on whatever you think your challenge is. What I do with people is initially diagnose them pretty quickly. It's basically a psychic reading. And I do offer them I can offer one reading. And it tells people in these areas of your life, and there are 12 basic ways I look at: community, intimacy, power, prayer, intention, love, your plans, your ability to communicate, your ability to trust, the guidance in your life, your imagination, your dreams, and your connection to divinity. And I look at all these areas and I say, which of these areas needs the most attention? If there's trouble in any one area of your life, that's a burden. It saps your strength, right? So even if you don't think it's important to look at your love life, that might be an area where, 30% of your energy is lost because there's a breakup in your past that's heavy. It's weighing on you. There's something that Toth taught me called zeroing. It's really an amazing and very simple dynamic whereby if you imagine there's like a wounded energy, it's like flailing around inside. If you hold it still, that takes effort. People are doing this all the time. They're holding pain still within themselves. And so that seems like a victory when you've been suffering a lot, but it's taking energy. That could be 20% of your energy wasted just to hold this pain still. So I help people go into that. I'm present with them I take over that job of holding it still for a little while. They can relax some, and then we take a look at it. So much of healing work ends up being about uncovering old trauma. And that can be a really harrowing path, but my goodness, it relieves burdens that free you. And when you're freed from baggage that's been with you most of the time, you get used to it, right? And then it's like all of a sudden it's easier to walk, it's easier to breathe, and it's easier to make choices and live a better life. Now this works great online. I used to do it mostly in person, but the pandemic came and, like many, I was pushed online, and it's really a benefit. I finished my book, I made a YouTube channel, and got my website out to many more people. And I'm surprised to find it works really well from a distance. In some ways, people appreciate it more because there's this barrier that makes it easier to be personal in a way. I mean, I had it in my head that I had to be a spiritual ascetic to learn. I don't think you have to be, but in my experience, it was like I have to give up everything to follow my path. So I was really out there. And at one point I was living in the woods for a little while with a more experienced, older healer woman. And we needed to get into town. And she said, all right, let's go hitchhike. And I had not hitchhiked. This wasn't a thing that I did. So we go out, we stand by the edge of the road. And she starts walking. It's like 5 miles, and we had a lot of stuff. And I'm like, I'm not walking. What are you doing? And she's like, look, sometimes you have to get started or God won't send you any support. I was like, okay. So we started walking, and sure enough, a truck came by. Now it passed where we'd been waiting, but she was adamant that our impetus, our momentum made a big difference. So what I found, and this is a basic lesson in my experience and what I give to other people, is sometimes you have to do what you can to get going in the right direction. And then you get the support. Then it'll come and be like, all right, this person's trying. Let's help them.
I get that. Yeah, that's a good bit of advice, that is, actually. And I know you're full of good advice as well, because obviously, like you say, you've got a journey, you've been through a story, and I know that's not what we're focusing on right now. Actually, you do talk about, I believe that there's probably videos on your YouTube channel where you do talk about your story, some of your path that you've been on. So I would recommend that actually maybe people watch that as well. All social media links are going to be in the description of this video. So obviously do check them out as well. Actually, I'll put a video down there to do with maybe you talking about your journey as well.
Please do. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, let's just talk about the courses that you do on the website as well. What are some of the courses that you do?
Well, I've developed 4, and right now I'm offering one broadly. The others are more for people who commit more heavily. But the one that's on my website, open to everyone, you can start at any time. And it's a basic introduction to 12 chakras, a simple, and I stress this, it's simple because I don't want to intimidate people, a simple yoga practice that helps you focus your energy. And it's 12 basic poses that you can do on your feet. And anyone can do them. They don't have to be difficult. And this integrates because when we wake up, our energy, when we heal, we get stronger. When you get stronger, there's a whole new range of challenges. And so finding grounding and getting back to the earth is really important. So I teach those things together. And that's the first basic course. You start it on your own. There's an incredible, I found an application that allows for a really personal video communication. It could be text or video. And so people could start it, and then they post a message recording themselves, and then I respond, that day, the next day. And they can also talk to each other in this way. So it's a real great shared experience, but you can start it whenever you want, and you just progress through the 13 lessons. So it's available. It's on the website. It's a good place to begin. I do encourage people who stick with me to do that. And I also offer, I offer just one reading. Like I can give people a reading that gives a basic overview of your whole spiritual state from this 12 chakra perspective. And that can be very powerful in its own right. For those who want it, it can function like a really cool psychic reading that just gives you a lot of good information about yourself. And then many people will stay with me, and they turn that into a coaching where we work week to week, and we're zeroing in on the problems and trying to alleviate them, put you in a better position to follow your path. The basic focus of the course is to put people in a position where they can do a lot to take care of yourself. It is within all of our grasp to do quite a bit more spiritually and psychically than people believe. And my calling in many ways is to help people trust that. I think some of the most effective and prolific channelers and psychics seem so far from everybody else that it's hard to relate. And the course is giving some solid places to rest where you can turn on your ability to tune in to yourself and be present with that without thinking it's going to just keep going deeper and deeper, or without getting confused like, well, I wasn't born with this gift. Because everyone has a degree of an ability to tune in psychically. So by the end of the first course that I offer, people can do a basic scan of themselves to learn like what needs attention. And that involves learning to focus and meditate in a simple way. And it's, again, I don't want it to be intimidating. It's just breathing and focusing and learning how to discern messages that say, hey, today is a good day to focus on communicating more clearly. Now, that doesn't seem like a big deal necessarily, but when you end up being able to trust that that really is the best place to put your attention, a lot of your life can get better. And the same structure ends up zeroing people in on their challenges and their wounds. So if you follow this guidance, you're going to end up finding, okay, I really can't stop thinking about my ex or whatever. And then you follow that a little deeper and accept, like, this is a burden. This needs more attention. And either I or someone else can help you apply that attention so you remove a burden from your life. the course is designed to put people in a position where you can do as much as possible on your own. And I really believe in empowering people in that way and in encouraging people to trust and respect their own psychic and spiritual abilities. And then I can be partnered with you and a healer for people who want to go deeper. So the following courses deepen that work. And I think it's best just to focus on the first for now.
Okay, wonderful. And obviously, the book is a companion to that as well. It's a companion to all the work that you've done. What brought the book into, well, obviously you've mentioned that having the pandemic there was a push to get the book published. But I mean, what was the drive behind the book? And if you just sort of give us a synopsis of the book as well.
Sure. So the book shares a basic backstory. It's not much. It's just pages. It's just enough for people to understand how I received this information. And then the rest of the book breaks it down chapter by chapter, short chapters. And the book's not long. It's 150 pages or something. And chapter by chapter, it's giving people another step in understanding how this works and then how to apply it. So the book itself is a synopsis, as you put it, of the courses, and is doing the same work. It's putting people in a position to diagnose themselves and even do some basic treating of yourself. So you know you have a broken heart. What do you do? And this steps you through what to do next. And I start with that because that's something people can relate to. People know what a broken heart feels like. But another chakra, the lung chakra, which people aren't very accustomed to, but it's in the Hebrew Kabbalah, this is where burdens are. So when we take on commitments, and you can learn to look into this chakra, understand the ways commitments contradict in a way that untangles a lot of tension, a lot of conflict in folks' life. And you end up having to make better decisions about what you will and will focus on. But at the end of the process, you're focused. You can really apply your attention and effort to whatever you're committed to. And you have a clear sense, no, I really can't take this on. And your system starts to exaggerate it. Like you'll feel the second you take on an unhealthy commitment. And as you get better at trusting that, it's like, I can't get over how joyful it is. It's like magic every day that helps me avoid an awful lot of work because I'm responding to my intuitive inner wisdom.
Oh man, there's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? So you've gone through this. Most of what's in this book, you feel that you've experienced yourself and come through on the other end, right? Yeah. Because I think you talk about that in your story as well. But obviously, you've got teachings in this book and in your courses and in your work in general that are from channeled material in a sense. Yeah, is it all a sort of combination in one way?
Absolutely. I mean, it started completely channeled. You know, he taught me first in a dream, and once I trusted he was there, I started to be able to bridge the gap. At first, it was sort of like sea rations when soldiers are out in the field and they have to drop in airdrop rations. At first, it was like that. Like I'd get a message and I would like cling to it. And as I trusted the messages, the connection got stronger and stronger to the point where it was conversational. So at a certain point,
but these are also experiences that you've had. I'm sorry to butt in there.
It ended up, to the point where I don't know how to suggest whether everybody could do this or not. I certainly committed everything to be able to make it work. But it's to the point where I can just, whenever I need to, I start talking. Now I've limited myself to a smaller number of angels. I work with Michael a lot, Archangel Michael. I don't channel him, or I haven't yet. I've only channeled Toth. He's the only one that's asked me to. So, I do what I'm told in many cases.
15 years ago then, how did you accept this is coming in? I mean, because I don't think you was that type of person completely, or was you? Had you shifted so much in, who you used to be, because we haven't talked about your backstory really, but
Right.
Was it a shock when it came to you? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Completely. And it was earth shattering. And I thought I was crazy. I thought I was a genius. I thought I went through it all, and then I thought, once I fully grasped what I was learning, I thought it was going to be, people were going to get it within a month. I was like convinced that it was going to light up the whole world. It was total extremes to integrate it. And just the process of accepting a voice in your head. I mean, that's what crazy is, right? Like hearing a voice in your head is what people call crazy. It was really difficult to overcome that. And so the discipline became like, it was survival. Like I had to be disciplined enough to stay focused with him, because when I wasn't, I was just able to pick up on everything. And it was too much in my head. So what I teach is how I was taught to heal myself, and then I offer it to others.
Well, what did that too much do to you? I mean, in the sense, did you end up, where did that take you?
Well, I was moving all the time. So I didn't stay I stayed in one place for 6 months in 10 years. Other than that, I wasn't in any place more than 3 months, and mostly I was 1 month. And I was loved, I was going back to the same places in many cases, but I couldn't stay still. I was just so alive and vibrant. And that was an incredible adventure. I mean, I was traveling around constantly, and it left me free and light to learn. And so nothing else mattered other than learning how to cope with these energies. And it was like riding a wild horse, It's like, and I that's why I call it Wildflower Fire, my business.
I was going to ask you that. Yes, yeah. That's why.
And I really love the sort of dual dynamic. Like we call wild something that I would call haywire. Wild truly is very in tune. Wild animals, they don't waste any energy. They're peaceful, they sleep, they rest, they hunt when they need to. They only fight when they have to. Wildness is very in tune with the earth. And so my experience is, when you first tap into these energies, you're wild like haywire, like hectic. And it's the process of learning to channel that energy and living a life that's more alive and often free. I really wanted to be free from the burdens of modern society and the pressures and expectations I was raised in. I was raised in an Ivy League university town. Like, there was a very heavy academic pressure, a disbelief in all the things that made me well. And so I still live with that pressure of a lot of the people who are most respected in my community have no place whatsoever for this work. And that's very hard to live with.
Right, because in the book you talk about your story as well, about, parents and, the journey of education, and just even some of your first few jobs that you did as well. Just that absolutely, it was as much as you found it easy to open doors for yourself to some of the high decent jobs back in the day, very worthy companies that you were working for in New York, but you just wanted to run away from them quicker than they could give you the opportunity for employment. Right?
Well, I'm the one telling the story, so obviously I'm biased, but I was raised with a lot of blessings, and I'm good at things that get paid well, and yet I was miserable. It was like death. I got an intuitive message, stethoscope. I didn't even remember what a stethoscope was. I had to look it up. And I went and bought one, and I started wearing a stethoscope at work and listening to my heart. And that's dangerous stuff, listening to your heart, because once you start listening to your heart, you can't really ignore it. And my heart said, I hate this. My mind said, this is the best job you're ever going to get. How could you possibly? We were making IBM's website, like right at the beginning of the .com boom. Like, the world was open to me. My friends are ridiculously experienced and wealthy in these fields, but I couldn't do it. I had another calling, and as many of your many of the people you've interviewed indicate, once you start following the calling, you have to do your shadow work. Nothing else is more important. You have to heal in order to just be healthy. So.
I can imagine doing the website work back in the day. I think if you were doing it nowadays, it might be driving you crazy. There's just God, it's so different nowadays. But totally. Just to be part of that era back in the day, doing those sort of corporate jobs, absolutely incredible. And yes,
it was exciting.
It absolutely, it must have been. But there was no passion for it. Something else was calling you. I mean, when you read your story, it's a bit like a movie. A little bit, I felt like when I heard a little bit about it, of your background, and it was just like, wow, okay, this I can see that in a film.
I had a girlfriend who was convinced Johnny Depp should play me, but I don't know if that would go over well anymore.
No, he won his case. He's fine. He's back in the public. I relate
to him.
Yes, Amber Heard, that's the baddie now. So, no. I'm sure those two souls are playing out their part and
Exactly. Sorry to
doing
bring
their
up
thing.
mainstream stuff, but yeah.
Why can't, mainstream's cool. Mainstream's fine.
Awesome,
I
awesome.
mean, we're not
Yeah.
anti-mainstream on this channel, and I don't think you are
I'm
neither.
glad to hear it.
I think it's a balance
No,
for you.
it is. And I have a real calling to reach people who don't believe in these things. And I wish I didn't. I wish I had. It's very frustrating. People's skepticism can be very aggressive and hostile, and that's tough to deal with. But I think the world needs it. Like, people are suffering in so many ways from things that we can heal and change. And many cultures all over the world have the tools. Basic shamanic practices are common on every continent. I've learned from quite a few different shamans in a way that healed things that people will spend years going back to the hospital again and again and again to try to work on things that we could fix in far simpler ways. So it's part of my calling to influence the mainstream to be more open to these approaches. And
Okay, so if we were going to say to people watching this, okay, let's just do a quick introduction to the 12 chakras, because I'm a bit rusty on it as well.
Sure.
I mentioned that just before the start of this interview. For those who may not have heard about it before, just very briefly, how would you introduce that?
So imagine what it was like to be a spirit before you were in a body. You relate to energy centers from that space. Now, they wouldn't be called chakras, but when we're pure spirit, we're much more conscious of spiritual resonance. When we're in a body, we're rediscovering it. But it's important to think of this as something like, when you die, your energy centers will still be with you. Your body won't. Many people know of the 7 chakras, and chakras means energy center, and it's inherited from the yogis in India. But there are a lot of other cultures that use something that sounds like energy center in their language. The Chinese have something called Dantian. The Hebrews have the tree of life in the Kabbalah, which some folks have heard of. The Maya had something called Koakal, and the Egyptians had this system of 12. The system most people know of is 7. And with all respect, I relate that to a child's flute, which has 7 notes. It's something it's a key in music. And all that means is they've chosen 7 notes that all sound good together. So you can play them all at any point. The chakra system many people know of is just like that. When you have 12 chakras, it's like adding the 5 black notes on the piano. And I have a video, the main video on my YouTube channel introduces this more in depth. When you add those 5 notes, you can express a much wider range of music. And the same thing goes with chakras. So you need these other notes in order to address some of the energies that are changing and waking up in the world. And we can't go back. A lot of forces have been starting to stir that it can be very confusing. And the more people are empathic and spiritually aware, the more it affects you, but it's happening to everybody. These 12 systems are addressing 12 different themes in our life. So the root addresses our community and the basic needs we have to survive. The sacral chakra addresses our intimacy and the way we share in relationships. Third chakra, in this model, in this 12, it's not the same numbers, but the third up from the root is the navel, right in the belly button. And it's about our power and our identity, who we know ourselves to be. The next up is the solar plexus, which is where our prayers and intentions and will are held. Next is the heart, compassion and love. And actually also desire and passion. So a lot of people get confused on that one because the heart can get angry, which is why people don't follow it as much as they would think they'd want to. Next up is super important. This is present in the Kabbalah, the tree of life, but no other system that I found addresses it other than this Egyptian system. It's the lungs. Some people know it as the high heart. And this is where our plans are held. So you can tell what someone is committed to loving. It's the love that you focus. You only have a certain amount of time. What are you committed to loving in your life? Next is your communication, your ability to share your truth. Now, some people misuse this, but your divine communication wants to express itself as fully and openly to everyone as they can. That's all held here in the throat. The chin is the trust in a trance that transforms you. So this is where energy stirs when it's time to change. and be taken beyond your boundaries. And it's an amazing way to focus your energy to kind of like, I love this pun, but the trust fund. This is where we invest our ability to trust changes in our lives. The nose tip is guidance. And it starts basic. It's like, what do you need today, right now? And when people activate this and get more in tune with it, it means you stretch more. You get out and go on a walk around the block more. You drink more water. That's where it starts. And once you follow those basic things, it becomes more in depth. You start following your guidance, and you end up bumping into a stranger who hands you a book that's exactly what you need to read. So when you get this chakra healthy, magic starts to happen day to day in a way that's really fun. Your third eye, many know of, it's where your imagination is, and it's this mediation between receiving messages, paranormal, psychic messages, and asserting what you want to create. So you can intentionally visualize what you want to create. Is also where you receive the pressures that are being pushed towards you, and you have to sort of make those two work together, and that's what happens in the third eye. The diamond eye is where dreams are. And again, it's this mediation between the dreams we have at night and the dreams we have for our life, for our future. And they happen on the same frequencies. So when we clean our nightmares and our bad dreams, we have more space to live a better life. And people often isolate negative energies within themselves into the diamond eye. It's a place that repressed energy gets pushed. So often people stuck dreaming or disturbed dreaming can be a real indication of something deeper to address. And your crown. The crown is sort of like if you're a fruit on the vine or a flower on the vine of life, the divine vine, this is where you're connected. So the way people relate to trusting, believing in divine love in this world, God, the sacred earth, whatever words you use, this is where that is held.
Right. And so when you're doing your sessions with the clients or courses or coaching, all the same thing in a sense, right? But depending on what the
Certainly.
client's after, then this is how you're connecting to the client, or this is how part of the work is taking place through the chakras, because this is what you've brought through. This is what you're working with energy-wise when you channel. Yeah.
And in fact, it's crucial. It's a way people can remember what they need to prioritize. And as I'm trying to say, I'm really focused on empowering people as much as possible, because sometimes I work with people once, and then for a long time I was traveling. I didn't know if I would see them again. I didn't have a website then. So I wanted to bless them as much as possible in one go. For me, it's a little difficult being me. Like I walk down the street, if I look at someone, I know about them. It's a lot, like it's the gift and the burden of it. And so the chakras end up being a focus. And so I can focus on communicating people, connecting with people through chakras. And it gives me actually a little bit of distance from them in a way that is healthy. It's quite healthy for both of us.
Absolutely. And then with the base chakra, how does that work with your work as well?
The root chakra it's the base for a real reason. People draw energy from the earth. And if you're not aligned, if you're not in the right community for you, if you're not surrounded by people who you trust and respect, it dramatically affects everything, because it brings up doubts all the time. You don't know that your basic needs will be met. You don't know who to go to for trust when you're afraid. All of those things, they're screaming in reality. Like the root just tells the story of.
Is that the same as sort of not connecting to your higher self or not listening to it? Or sometimes that higher self, it can be the most distant voice there, but it's there, but you've not listened to it for so long. Is that the same as not grounding in a sense?
Well, I think grounding puts you in a position where it's much easier to listen, right? I think a lot of times people are afraid to listen to their own higher self because there's a sense of getting too light, almost like you're out of your body, out of the world. And for that reason alone, it's so important to just, spiritual work is like eat right, drink water, go on walks, breathe the air. You need to do those things if you want to wake up your connection to your higher self.
I see. So that's some of the principles that you use, just the bare basics, just to ground yourself.
It's amazing how often people they want to talk about the most extreme spiritual stuff. I'm like, you need to drink more water.
Yeah. I hear you. And as you say, go for walks as well, and just to be out in the open. I know it sounds so obvious, but maybe.
No, but it's often the biggest difference you can make at first, you know?
You're right, absolutely. Now, musical chakras. How does that fit
Yeah.
into? Well, let's just touch on chakra sequences and musical chakras because I know it's
Yeah.
all sort of connected. So
Yeah, this is really beautiful. And again, I don't want to overwhelm people. Any musician with a little bit of music theory could help you understand this. So you could go to them and talk to them about it, for you and for any listener. It's a cycle known as the circle of fifths. So when you're playing the notes in a piano in a row, it doesn't sound very good. Da, 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 da. It's not music. And energetically, it's the same thing. If you actually insist on focusing on chakras linearly, it doesn't feel good. It's sort of jerky and jolty, and there's no momentum, and the energy literally won't flow well. This one cycle, the first playlist on my YouTube channel, there's like 15 videos that are a meditation all in this cycle. Different ways to do it: long, short, medium, with yoga, because the cycle itself is harmonic. So again, it's there, but it goes from the heart to the crown, to the throat, to the sacral, to the nose tip, to the solar plexus, to the diamond eye, to the lungs, to the root, to the chin, to the navel, to the third eye, to the heart. All of those steps are harmonic. So when you memorize that order, and it's just a little work, it's just 12, and once you know that order, if you have any problem with one chakra, you don't look next to it. You look at the chakras that are next to it in the cycle of the circle of fifths, which we're calling the key ring, because it unlocks your energy. So when I have a problem with my heart, I need to look at how I imagine myself in the world, and I need to look at my connection to divinity. Likely, these things are out of balance also, and maybe they are more open to change than directly addressing my grief. And then when you shore up these areas of your life, you can readdress your grief, and it becomes more relatable. Like you're not necessarily as afraid because you've done work to put yourself in a stronger position to face the deep feelings. So just this one cycle is a very powerful addition to people's ability to understand themselves. You just go in the cycle when you're looking at yourself. So you can keep going in a way that would work. So if I have a broken heart, anyone who's broken in a relationship, it puts you in this like deep space, like everything can be up to question. So you start asking questions about your relationship to divinity in the world. That shifts you a little bit out of the pain of the broken heart, and it's intense enough to draw your attention. And then you say, okay, we'll keep going. The next in the cycle is the throat. And what this means is once you've had some revelations in your life, divine insight on any level, you need to communicate it. You need to. It's a spiritual need. If you don't share it, the energy gets blocked. So then now we're talking about how can we help you communicate, share your work with the world. And we're on to a whole new challenge. And again, this is pulling you a little bit out of yourself, out of the grief, out of the anguish, and giving you a focus that matters and it's strong. So it's this process extended. All of those 12 themes interrelate and can help heal each other.
thank you for sharing that. And this is going to be a little bit different to other channel interviews, for they call us channels, because obviously everyone's work is different, right, when it comes to what they do in the world. And yours is very unique as well. Just describe to us what flower routines are, because you talk about this as well.
Yeah, and I love the pun of flower, flow, someone who flows, flower. And the flower routines are about how we are flowing energy when we come to life. The routines are in this sequence that I just described. The simplest version is just I'm playing a violin note that is the pitch associated with each chakra. And you just take a breath. You focus on the heart, you breathe. Focus on the crown, you breathe. Now, then we extend it, and I spend a minute on each chakra, a little more, and give people a little bit of guidance and a meditation through. And that's another one of my more popular videos. And then there's one with yoga. And so you're doing a yoga pose associated with each, and it helps center your entire energy, and your physical body reinforces the emphasis on the chakra. So I'm doing it just in a lot of different ways, and those ways end up working well together, both to keep you healthy, but then it becomes the same medicine that people use once they discover, oh, this is wrong with me. This needs attention. And so the courses take it deeper into how to apply that on your own.
That I've already kind of asked you this. I just want to go back to it a little bit, because I speak about this a lot in the shows that I do, which is purpose. And I just want to make sure I haven't missed this with you, because I find your story fascinating, and I wish we could share a bit more of the backstory, but I just know we haven't got the time for it, right?
Sure.
And maybe there's another interview for that, right? But when did you start feeling that this was your purpose? I mean, I know obviously in your your previous careers that you had on, whether it's Wall Street or working on with the big corporates, for web design and other things that you were doing. You did other sorts of jobs as well, right? When did you, with what you're doing now, this is your purpose, right? But when was that transition from on the journey of this information coming through you to just knowing that, this is it, I'm going for this, I just know this is the one? Or was it not quite like that? Was it a long and sort of extended period?
It was, in a way, but I think the moments of realizing it were there, and then I tried to run away from it because it was so intense. So I had two major transitions, one at 25 and one at 31. At 25, I left the work. And when I did, to be honest with you, I couldn't sleep for 5 days. I was hearing messages in my head. I was overwhelmed. I was terrified. I thought I was going crazy. And I went into work and I asked them for some help. And I said, I haven't slept in 5 days. They called 911. And as soon as the people showed up, they said, what's wrong? And I started crying. I was in a corporate high rise, 50th floor or something. I'm crying in an elevator. They took me to a mental hospital. And so I was immediately like, fuck you people. Like, forgive me, feel free to edit that out. But like I'm crying, and that's a mark that I'm mentally ill. I need a different kind of help. I was actually, that was the end of my life with my girlfriend, my job. Like, there were real reasons I was sad and overwhelmed. So for 2 days I was in this hospital and I was terrified. It was like 3 locked doors, and I just went in. I went in and I'm like, pretty quickly, I'm like, these people don't have a clue what's going on. So I decided not to tell them what, they were asking me questions, and I was straight up not telling them that I was hearing voices, that I was seeing visions, that I was, and I got a very powerful visitation by Jesus. And I was raised Christian, and Jesus meant everything to me. And when Jesus shows up, I was like, okay. And things got a lot more peaceful. And I didn't hear words. I just knew he was with me. And it gave me the confidence to not tell them what was wrong and to reserve it inside. And I'm blessed. I mean, I come from a well-to-do family. My parents drove 4 hours, came and got me, and they took me home. And I was released on the condition that I see someone, and they happened to have a friend who was a holistic doctor. So I went and visited her, and all of a sudden she knew how to help. So she's introducing me to these themes that I'm like, this didn't work and this did work. And that process, there are no words, it's like, this is medicine for the worst problems that some people go through. And a lot of folks are getting drugged and demonized and made crazy and disrespected and just really treated in a way that makes it much worse. So that alone was the calling. Like, I want to help people who are like me, who care a lot. I care so much about people, like, I really want to support and help people when I know they're suffering. So many sensitive, caring people end up in these challenges and end up being drugged and being treated like they're a pariah, or there's something like broken about them, in a way that I want to give the tools to love that.
Of course, absolutely. Of course, you're going to be delirious if you've not had sleep for 5 days. But I also think that there's another side effect of that as well, which is actually you've opened yourself right up. Then you're totally opened up then from having not that much sleep, and anything kind of sort of attach itself to you in that sense. Anything that wants to have a little bit of fun, right? A bit bored, and sees you as a sort of light, in a sense, to latch on to, or whatever it may be. But thankfully,
and that happened.
That's what happened. Yeah. But that is not a story that's isolated. Actually, I think that story could be other people's story.
And I've heard some of them with you, which is why I'm grateful to you for your work in so many ways.
Well, no, I know someone else with the same sort of story, but not on the 50th or 90th floor in a corporation, right? you can laugh back at it now, do you know what I mean, and see it for what it is. But maybe them even, calling 911, it was the right thing to do. But actually, the only thing you could have done really is actually just slept. But it was all meant to be the way it played out.
Well, and it gave me this incredible confidence to say, wow, the mainstream answer really isn't what I need. And it pushed me in, it pushed me into myself in a way that I know it's divine in that regard. And I'm just really grateful.
God bless your parents, right, for for putting you in contact with the person that they did. And is mum and dad still with us?
Yeah, that I live in hometown with them, and they've been incredibly present and supportive. And they're both professors. So their support and respect meant a lot. Now, it's been quite a wild ride in between, but I have good friends and good family who have stayed with me, and they appreciate my work now. They're like,
yeah, I know, right?
They find it interesting in a way that's really humbling.
Isn't that incredible? How things have changed so much. Even the pandemic changed so many things. But just
God.
The times that we are in right now here, that you can say those things, and people accept.
I almost
Daniel
feel like
who they are.
I almost feel like some like skeptic radar, like aggressive control, just got pointed at something else. So like the pressure is off of me in a way it never was before. I used to feel like if I put myself out there, like people were gonna leap on me and start.
Well, how much do you
arguing.
Well, absolutely. How much do you put the stuff out there that you've got the channel side as well? Because I've not listened. I've only seen, and I'm presuming that when you present yourselves to different people or different ways, that it's not always the channel that comes out on the forefront. That we're going to push that in just a moment, because obviously this is they call us channels. But I'm guessing that this information is that grounded that. For some people who don't, who aren't ready for that kind of stuff, you don't need to be talking about that because.
And exactly, and it's a real gift in that way. And I have purposely tried to frame it in a way that people can engage this work and not necessarily go all the way into the backstory and feel overwhelmed by the implications. It's just something more tangible. Most people know what having a burden on your shoulders means. Like you can talk to someone about that. And it's very valuable too. Like just focusing on that can really benefit someone's life.
Absolutely. I'm curious as well. With your wife, how does she take? I mean, obviously she was there during the transition.
Brilliant.
Yeah, right.
My wife, believe it or not, grew up across the street from me. She really did. I came home. Not at all. Like I came home after these 10 years of traveling, and I was exhausted, and I was ready to throw in the towel in a way. And I got a message to stay, and that I needed to have a family. I needed to take care of myself more. And within a year, I met my wife at a potluck. We'd gone to the same elementary school, and I didn't know her. She's a little bit younger than me, but she's awesome because she's very grounded. She's extremely intelligent, and she believes in me without getting wistful about it. Like she doesn't get all hype. She's more like, do the work.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I wrote the book because she's around saying,
right. No, well, that's good. That's good. What do you think having the kids and the family have done for you personally then?
Everything. I mean, because in so many ways, this work, like I need to be a parent to this work. It's a long-term responsibility, and there's nothing like children to force you to change, force you to serve on a level deeper. And so my son is 5, and my daughter Anna, my son is named Benji, and he's 5, and my daughter Anna is 1. And something about them just makes me want to be my best and
that's beautiful.
Help people serve as best I can.
Well, I think there's a lot of beautiful qualities about having a family and everything else. I think it is grounding. It's so many things. It's so many things, and it wasn't your time before, but it is now. And it's interesting how that all connected and came together. So, which is fantastic, and you can still do the work, right? So, which is also important. Yeah, that's interesting because not every channel that I meet has it's a real mixture. It really is.
Well, And I've noticed I happen to gravitate to several women who you've interviewed who have little babies. And I so appreciated the parallels in our stories and how they talk about the necessity of doing their shadow work, and then how the children sort of amplify that process and create a sense of responsibility for the work in a way that before I was just trying to do my best, but it was almost like I was never an A student. I didn't like academics very much, but on this, I've been like an A student. I'm like, oh, I've got to be perfect. I've got to, because I care about it so much. But there's something sort of childish about that. And the transition to being a parent has put me in a sense of like, I have to tend this. I have to water it every day. I have to, long-term commitment.
How have your parents taken that you channel now? Did they sort of, they must be aware of that. I mean,
they gulp a little. I don't lead about it at the dinner table.
No, of course not. No.
My wife's mother is also very much in the picture we all live around, and they smile. I asked her one day, because I was most afraid of her reaction, because I know my parents, I know how to deal with them. And she's like, hey, my mother used to visit a healer that my wife's mother grew up in Israel, and she actually grew up on the Sea of Galilee. And she used to visit a healer who channeled Jesus. And she's just like, she just smiled at me and she's like, go for it. I'm like,
isn't that incredible? All the way over in Israel.
Yeah.
I was interviewing, I interviewed a Israeli channeler.
Oh, wow.
Just a few, maybe 4 weeks ago. And there is more over there, but just to hear what that's all those crazy little stories that time ago,
So much.
Actually, it wasn't that long ago, but I mean, she's had a life over here for a while, I can imagine. So, right. Okay. I'm not surprised your parents are cool with, you doing what you do, because I just get that feeling that they're very accepting and they're, open, even though they've got the PhD. They're very well learned, and hats off to them for what they've both achieved in their careers as well. So that's interesting. What a mixture. What a cool mixture.
It's an incredible balance, really, because
yeah,
I would say my preference would be for people to be surrounded by people who are more excited about what I do. But I think I've gotten exactly what I need, because they're just steady. Yeah. It's like, they bring me back to earth. They're like, come on, what are we going to cook for dinner? I think it's so
important to be grounded, man, in this work, because
exactly
it just is. And I think that's what your work is, very, very grounded. I'll just say that. And I'm not saying others isn't. I'm just saying
and I've had to be, because I was so out there. I mean, the revelations that brought me this stuff, I'd be gone for days. I would not eat for
for those that
a long time.
No, this is true. This is another good point. People are going to be like, oh, Kev, he's just interrupting all day today. But actually, that's another really good point. For others that are suffering with that same thing, where they're just so out there and they can't bring themselves back, what was the one thing that, apart from the breakdown, right, which we all need sometimes, right, but what was the one thing that brought you back, that now looking back, you could have said, you know what, should have just done that?
Well, it ended up being healing trauma. And I think far more than, it's very tempting to focus on the gifts. And I think in many ways, I trust I was incarnated in this life with the pain that I have in order to bring these gifts into the world. But the reality is, when you're going through it, there's often pain is the driving force. So that there's this dynamic called spiritual bypassing, where people will overemphasize spiritual things because their body and their ego is such an unpleasant place to be. And that's what I did from when I was 25 to when I was 31. That's what I did. I had repressed trauma that I didn't know about. And as a result, I would just spontaneously, things would trigger me and I would go way out there. And I didn't have the interpretation that I was avoiding something. I don't know if I could have done it faster, but when I was 31, I went back to work with the initial holistic doctor who I mentioned, who I visited, introduced me to a holistic therapist who worked with something called EMDR. It's amazing stuff. I encourage anyone going through spiritual extremes to consider it. It was developed to heal post-traumatic stress disorder. And she worked with me for a third round at 31, and we uncovered a repressed trauma from my childhood. And man, when we uncovered that, it stopped. I mean, she worked with me in a way that it healed. She didn't give me coping mechanisms, like we healed that stuff. And again, I don't know if I could have done it earlier, but certainly the value that I share with everyone is you want to face your trauma. Everything in someone's mind is usually designed to avoid pain, but you want to face it because you can heal it, you can resolve it, and once you do, life is so much better. It's just, and I was free to live, to do my work. And before then, I was just, at any given moment, something could trigger me, and I would leave. Like, I would just go from one city to another city. Like I would do whatever it took to kind of ride this wild energy, not knowing that I was basically spiritually bypassing. I was avoiding the pain inside.
Let's move on with the channeling.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to talk about the process and how it works for you.
Well, so again, I'll try to keep it simple, but everything is vibrational. Like, we are ultimately spirit before we're physical. When there's any interference in our vibration, you can't get deeper. Now, you might block it out. People block out interference, but that takes energy. It's this thing zeroing that I called. Like, you have to hold dissonance still in order to not pay attention to it. So the cycle that I do, the meditation cycle I do, cleanses me every day. I do it daily, sometimes a couple times a day, in simple forms. And once I'm clear in that way, I just focus and I ask. And once I do, a lot just pours through. And for me, the longest time, I wanted to answer the big questions. So there's about 20 channelings on my channel, unfortunate maybe, but on my YouTube channel, there's a playlist of Thoth channelings. And they're basically just they explained the big issues to me. I really wanted to know how the world works, why this, how this. And he taught me in a way that has remained consistent. So that was the dominant use of the channeling then. And then in healing sessions, I don't say Thoth is telling you this. And now I could, and I don't disrespect anyone who does it that way, but it feels a little unnatural. He's with me. So when I see things in people, I'm constantly asking, is this right? Do I see this right? And he's giving me like a mentor a mentor who's always there, helping me focus and emphasize it. So when I give people sessions, I'm confident that I'm giving them a session from the same depth that he exists in, that he teaches me from.
The process of you connecting, you just sort of, tell us how you connect.
So I had to do something that basically turned it down, because again, I spent so many years just as soon as I had an undisciplined mind. So as soon as I started focusing on an entity, I was connecting. And that was sloppy. And I was like haywire all the time. I was just like getting all sorts of stuff in my head, and I was changing my frequency constantly. It's like taking a guitar and just turning the knobs all the time. It doesn't sound good anymore. So I developed this discipline because he told me to just talk to him. And I developed this ability to turn it down. So often I will only hear like the computer voice, just like a monotone voice in my head. When it deepens, there's a reason, but I needed to develop this in-between space where I wasn't immediately melding with whoever I was communicating with. And again, I mean, anyone I wanted to talk to, I started talking to. So it was all over the place. And it still works that way. I just don't do it most of the time. I try to stay focused,
Okay. Well, so how quickly does your process take to get connected?
It's as soon as I try.
Wow.
It's just immediate.
That's pretty cool. Okay. Well, let's bring Thoth through.
Actually, it's Kaiya that wants to come through, and I haven't done this.
Interesting.
Live, but he redirected me.
Okay, then let's bring Kaiya through, if that's the energy that wants to come through.
So yeah, there's a message. It's not anything I asked a question about, but once I start, it'll go. Misery is not necessary. It's a focal point that leaves you when you understand why it was there. You haven't been here. You aren't here in your body yet. Consider this body a gift that I gave you as a home that you are only slowly learning to occupy. It is the art of being present in your body that extends beyond this lifetime. It isn't this body that matters so much as the opportunity to be more present in a future lifetime. In order to consider yourself a part of this, you need to be open to understanding your identity beyond this one life. As you do, you will begin to access a sense of self that is much happier. You crashed into Earth. When you crashed, you were given an opportunity to leave. Some beings come and leave quickly. It's okay. We make use of what they bring, and yet the love that is available in a future beyond what you know of reality is far more beautiful. It is not necessary to incarnate during eras when violence and resentment and vengeance are so dominant. These are temporary phases. They are not the core presence of this earth. They have been presenced in order for you to work through energies that are temporary. They will complete. Misery is not eternal. It is temporary. By working through it, you will be able to see a much more loving life now. And as you emphasize it and trust it, you will be put in a position to be born again in an era without so much of what humans know to be normal sufferings. I invite you to dream of staying. She's done.
Well, that's an interesting message. That was a very interesting message.
Oh, yeah. I think I got it. Sometimes I don't really know what I'm saying, but
no, that made a lot of sense. And there was no interaction there. There was just the message, but the message was bloody interesting. I'll say that. You've never done that before live, have you? Like, as you said before.
Not live, no. No. In all appreciation of you, I've been, kind of insular, and I wait for things to be obvious, and a viewer encouraged me to reach out to you. They said
I'm so glad you did, because I think you just need. Well, I think we all connect together when we're supposed to, don't we? And I can give you, yes, an audience that's going to be interested in what you do, which is lovely to be able to do that for you.
I'm really tired of struggling with academics. Can I share something on that?
Absolutely.
All right. So there's a beautiful lesson which I know of as the skeptic's dilemma. We live in a world where much of, or modern society in America, is driven by this kind of academic rigor that essentially trusts that attacking each other, arguing with each other is a good way to learn. Now, there's a lot of things you can learn this way, but there's a lot of things you can't. There are some lessons that you can only embrace when you trust first. And so the skeptic's dilemma is that if you remain too skeptical in the face of the beauty, of the truth, of the love in this world, you can't be with it. If you immediately start doubting and raising doubts, that's what you're creating. You're creating doubt. Now, there's a terror in many people in just saying, well, you can't just tell me to trust. I'm not just going to trust anything. It's like, no, you're not. You're going to trust love. You don't trust everything. You still use discretion, but there are many worlds, there are many lessons that you cannot access unless you put belief first. And there's an art to how to believe that can be learned. It's not just blindly trusting anything that comes along. There's a reason many cults existed. There's a reason some people with spiritual knowledge manipulate others. They make use of this the dynamic of saying, trust me. If you don't trust me, it won't work. And anyone's trust is powerful. When you put your trust in someone else's hands, that trust itself is powerful. So the art of loving life is about putting your trust in the right places. And it really is as simple as starting with love. You put your trust in love. And there are some lessons that universities in their current form can't learn. They can't study because they doubt them too much. And the irony is, there are a lot of studies that prove psychic phenomena. There are a lot of studies that illuminate channelings and channeled messages. But the mainstream culture in America hasn't been ready to embrace them yet. And I'm excited to be a part of changing that, because there's a whole world beyond the boundaries that we know of as normal, that we know of as true, that you just can't cross. You can't cross a certain boundary until you set down your skepticism. Doesn't mean stop asking questions. It means don't hold them so tight. Don't use aggression when you encounter something that doesn't make sense to you. It's okay to doubt. Just keep it gentle, keep it calm, keep it focused, because the energy we put in to our lives and to our beliefs is present. When someone aggressively says, I don't believe that, they're creating something. They're creating a vibration that it gets in the way. When I tell you that what you believe in has a powerful effect on reality, that's still true, even if you don't believe it. So when you say, I don't believe in channelers, you're making it less possible to trust channeling. Your own power of belief has been invested in something that inhibits the beauty of this process. Now, again, it doesn't mean just trust anyone who says they're channeling. There's an art to getting good at it. And as many of the really beautiful people that I've seen interviewed on the Kevin Moore show say, shadow work is crucial. I think it's one of the most prominent places that skepticism can play a role. You can be skeptical that a channeler or a healer or a psychic has done their work. Have they done their work? Have they cleared themselves? Have they done the work to heal? Because anyone who carries wounds, those wounds get in the way of your ability to channel and heal. And the problem is, people in this form, very wounded people, can bring through extraordinary messages mixed with a projection of their own wounds and confusion and their pain. And you have to be able to discern, that their pain is in there. You're allowed to do that. You could be skeptical in this sort of gentle, calm way that says, I think they might have more work to do. But I think a lot of the folks I've seen, they know this. This is one of the first lessons that angels teach, is you got to do your work to heal yourself. And so in that commitment, you're removing your shadows. A shadow is something that blocks the light, but we are light. This isn't just a vague thing, like we are light. And if anything in us is blocking the light, that means we have a heaviness, a woundedness that's blocking the light. That's the only thing that makes a shadow. So our shadows help us find out where we're sick. Our shadows help us find out where we're wounded. And when we do that work, we clarify ourselves and put ourselves in a better position to love this life and to bring through spiritual truth that you have to believe is possible for it to work. If you don't believe it's possible, you can't even see it or hear it. Sometimes faith has to come first. And that is the skeptic's dilemma. The skeptics don't know how to trust. And even in modern American society, there's this sense that it's like a good thing. It's like powerful to doubt. We should attack other ideas. That's what'll make us stronger. Well, it doesn't work in this space. In spiritual knowledge, in channeling itself, you have to trust it for it to work. And again, it doesn't have to be blind, but you have to put the trust first.
Absolutely. Well, listen, just remind us of your website one more time. It is
Wildflower Fire. Those three words in a row. .com.
Excellent. And again, you do more channelings. They are on your website, your YouTube channel, and we'll link your YouTube channel. Do you know what your YouTube channel name is? And we can
it's
just say
Wildflower Fire on YouTube.
That's simple.
All one word.
Yep.
If you do two words, some singer has made a song called Wildflower Fire, and it'll come up quickly if you put separate words. So make it one word.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we're going to link all that. We put everything on the screen as we've been speaking as well. Of course, your book's been popping up as we speak, and all the links as well. Is there a final message that you might like to give to the audience?
everyone has access to an incredible amount of magic. It's some of the most fun and beautiful ways to heal that are seemingly normal at first. And that's why I emphasize for folks, you know what it feels like to have a broken heart. Did you know that's energy work? Did you know that's the same energy work that ends up opening up intuition and psychic reality? It's the same stuff. The reason many people don't go deeper is because in order to go deeper, you have to allow this flow to wake up. Now, the first thing that wakes up is often pain. I use an analogy of what I call the river in the stream. There's a video on my channel called Kundalini Awakening. And imagine there's a stream and it trickles down a river for a long time, or down its bed for a long time. Over time, logs fall in, the stream kind of goes around it. A deer even dies and it's rotting in a pool. It's kind of gross, but whatever, the stream does its thing. Then something changes and it starts to rain. And it rains so hard that the flow of water through this stream bed it starts to expand, and it starts to be much stronger than it ever was before. And that stirs things up. It moves the little pool of the rotting corpse. It moves the log, and it starts flushing these things. Well, this is good. This is good. But it can feel very unpleasant because people were accustomed to avoiding these pains and these ugly, they just, they develop coping mechanisms. And it's so important to trust that often when these things come to the surface, it's a good sign that you're awakening, and it forces you to do this work to get the junk out of the way so this can become a river. You can let a full strength move through you, and you have to connect this, because often when the pain comes up, people will go, turn it down, stop it, stop it, stop it. Well, that's the same prayer that says, turn down the love, turn down the power, turn down the passion. It ends up being the same prayer. So people need to trust that these can be good signs, you can move through them, and you end up in a much better place.
Well, thank you, Daniel, for sharing that as well. And I just want to thank you for coming on. And I'm going to get you back on at some point, and I think we'll just go a bit deeper into the channeling. But just for you, as an introduction to your work, and for you to sort of, put yourself out there as well, I really appreciate you coming on. So just thank you so much.
Kevin, I really appreciate you. You have a calling that I respect greatly, and you're doing good work for the world. Thank you.